Hello, another tutorial from me, and in this one we're going to be looking at making little miniature trees here using multi-strand wire similar to this cabling here. Now there are quite a number of really good tutorials on the internet about making multi-strand wire trees, but I have a couple of tips that will make them a little bit better for you. Now the first thing to do is take some wire which is multi-strand wire that's nice and strandy. Cut a piece off with your pliers, and then with the pliers you're going to then pull the plastic off the best way you can. Strip it so that we end up with all the strands. Then we're going to twist it to get a main trunk. Now if you're wanting some roots, you can have one bottom end of it, separate them out and just twist them around, and then keep dividing them and twisting them around so that they're going to sit on there with your roots. Now at the top you're going to split them, just randomly split them, keep twisting it around and keep splitting. Okay, and you're going to be starting to get a tree trunk like this. Now, one thing that you can do to improve that is to take a soldering iron. I have one here, a nice industrial one, but if you need to, you can take a candle and use that to heat your tree, and use some solder to be able to solder it. I'm going to take a little bit of flux, which is a paste flux, and paste it onto the trunk of it, so that it's going to solder properly. Then with a pair of pliers so I don't get burnt, always make sure you don't get burnt, I'm going to then apply some solder to it. The reason for applying the solder is twofold. One is that it is going to even out the strands so that I'm not going to see so much of the texture of the wires all coming together, and the other is also so that at a later date I can add branches in, which I'll show you very shortly. So it gives you a little bit more of a smoother texture, and when we paint that it won't look quite so strandy. Now if you don't have a soldering iron, you can still do the same thing by applying your flux and things and then heating it over the flame. Make sure you don't put it in the flame because it'll make it all black and charred, and then that will dirty up the joint and it won't stick. But it will heat it enough to make sure that your solder is going to melt into it, and you're going to get a lot smoother trunk that way. So in the end we get a little tree that's got a reasonably smooth trunk, some roots and everything's on there. Now the extra bits at the top, you can see we've now got a lot more material to be able to start twisting, dividing and twisting again, so that we can then make our branches get thinner and thinner and just keep twisting and twisting and twisting. So eventually we get a little tree that's got all its branches spreading out and ready to take the foliage. Now about this stage you can either dip the whole thing into a pot of paint to paint everything, some nice thick paint, or you can go around painting it with a brush as well, just to get the colour that you want of your trunk and everything, covering all the metal. The next thing to do is to take a piece of twine and start cutting it into very short little pieces to get some very fine little branches. Is get a little bit of paint, mix it around until it gets all nice and green and wet, and into the microwave give it a few seconds to warm it up. Stir it around a bit until it cools. Put it back in the microwave and repeat the process until it's dry. So then I have my dry coloured fibre and my little tree painted and dried, and now I'm going to get some Elmer's white glue and start to dab little dabs of glue onto the very tips of my very fine wire branches, and then take some of the fibre and sprinkle it onto those little blobs of glue, and some of those will stick, and that's going to be the base of what your foliage is going to stick to. Now, some people use mono or like thread fibre, but I find that it goes into a big glob, and then you lose the beauty of all those lovely branching branches that you've taken so much trouble to get, and they get hidden. So this sort of fibre is a lot better. So you're going to get some tufty tips on the end of your little fine things. Then let that dry. So we've got the wire trees all soldered together, then the fibres painted and stuck on, and the trunk painted. So now we've got a little nice little fine base to then take some white glue again, a little bit thinned down, maybe 50-50, water to glue, and then start dabbing on those fibres to get the tips of them all wet. And then you're going to take some sawdust foliage and sprinkle that on, and then that will stick to the to the smaller fibres, so that you get a nice light tuft of tree leaves on the end. Now, after you've gone over the first time over, let that dry, and then go over just dabbing what you've done in any stray fibres that you might want to put foliage on. And then once you've dabbed all over that with the glue, once again sprinkle it again, and you'll get a fuller block of foliage on the ends of your little branches. You'll still also be able to see the branches that you've so painstakingly gone to the trouble of making and painting and all that, so that unlike the fibre, the poly fibre, it becomes a blobby thing. Just shake it up, and you can see that you get a lot nicer open tree